My name's Michael Salter. I'm a professor of art in art and technology. The University of Oregon is located on Kalapuya Alihi, the traditional indigenous homeland of the Kalapuya people. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation in western Oregon. Today, Kalapuya continue to make important contributions to their communities, to the U of O, to Oregon, and to the world. I have the special position of introducing a former student of mine, which I think is at some point a rung on the ladder for every professor. Shawna X is here with us today, a New York-based creative. Shawna's work is motivated by ideas around cultural identity, the creative process, and motherhood. She's been invited to speak on these topics by Adobe Max, Us by Night, and Creative Independent, in addition to being an AIGA keynote speaker. She creates experiences in music, fashion, and technology, collaborating with clients such as The New Yorker, Mini, Academy Awards, Nike, Google, and Ghostly International. With solo exhibitions in Brooklyn, group shows in LA, New York, Chicago, and Portland, she is widely published and recognized in press by Adobe, Creative Independent, It's Nice That, and Complex Style. She's been a speaker at the Adobe Max, the New School, Pratt, PSU, and AIGA. Please join me in welcoming Shawna X, a former 2009 Digital Arts, which is now Art and Technology graduate.
Hi. Oh, damn, that was an intro. I'm like, whoa. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Shawna. You can call me Shawna. I haven't spoken in person in a long time because everything's been on Zoom, so this is very surreal for me, and also very surreal to come back to a campus after 13 years. And a lot of things are the same, like Career House is still there, Doco is still there. It's crazy. Just wanted to throw that out. It's awesome to like come back to a place and see all the niceties, you know, feels grounding. So I'm like tripping out right now as we're speaking. Anyway, I'm so happy to be here. Like, thank you, Salter and Colin, for bringing me out. I mean, you know, here to talk about my life. I like to have I'll throw this out there if you guys want to join. If you have any questions you want to bring up in the middle of the talk, happy to do that. But if not, we can just wait until after the conversation. But anyway, I'm Shawna. Hi. I've been working as a visual artist and illustrator for like full-time since 2016, actually. So it hasn't been crazy long, but I've done a lot since then. I've been working on some pretty fun projects, anything like physical to motion. Currently working on like a station in Long Island City Railroad, which is really exciting for me. So I'm here to kind of talk about some of the processes, but a lot just thinking about life in general. But let me start with this photo. I always start with this picture. It's me as an 8-year-old in art class in Portland, Oregon. That's where I grew up, immigrated to from China with my parents. So I like to show this photo because it's always nice to see like the root of where you come from. My parents left a really stable life to come to America for the American dream, where they were working at the Chinese restaurants for like $3 an hour. So I never knew, I knew when I was a kid I never asked for anything. But the one thing my parents afforded and was open to affording was this art class that I took every Sunday. And so it was at a woman's house in Beaverton, Oregon, where we learned like technicalities in acrylics, watercolor, charcoal. You know, she was like a very strict teacher. She didn't let me use colors like purple next to green, which I think is absurd. But when I was like 8, I was like, this is fine, sure, this is, you know, art. But I always knew art was a very personal thing for me. I drew before I knew how to write. I drew before I learned English as a language. And I think, to me, art is communication, it's expression. And I've always known for sure that art was my innate ability to understand, appreciate, and feel the world. And I think my secret, or what I honor about myself, and I'm sure a lot of people here feel the same way, is I really trust my intuition. of what I feel is truthful, authentic, and when I see it in other people's work, I resonate with that. And I think we all know this feeling when you see something, you don't have to talk about it, you understand and feel it. And it's like an irreverent thing, and that always sticks with me. So, I mean, Sundays were my favorite days, not because of art class, but because it was when the comic sections came out in the papers. I think I first experienced art through comics. I think the most relatable thing when I was a child was this artist named Linda Berry. She would draw a lot of comics about puberty and just life as like a girl that grew up in kind of like lower middle class, dealing with popularity and zits and hormones, and I really resonated with that. So, you know, her books, I just loved reading through them. And I realized comics and just the way people draw and illustrate is not just a way for me to feel seen, but also a way to escape from the reality of my world at that time. And of course, there's a lot of other comic artists I really resonate with. You know, Charles Burns, obviously. I really like Foxtrot, too. I don't know if you guys ever read any of that. It was just like a very nice all-American slice of life, and I think as a child, I really wanted that. I just like wholesome comics a lot. And I think when I discovered Sailor Moon, that was when I was like, okay, there's magic, like pure magic in art, because I think the author or the artist, Naoko Takeuchi, who drew Sailor Moon, she's just able to create such magic and emotion through color. I think when I found her work at Powell's bookstore when I was 8, I remember just being like, I can't believe this exists, you know, like this is insane. Like such a beauty, like so wonderful. It was the first time I've ever felt floored by anything. And I think like looking back, this stays with me. Sailor Moon, the manga, stays with me till this day. And just like the feeling that the artist evokes in her work. And you know, for me, process of making something out of nothing is just magic. And I think that's something that even now as a mother, I have 2 young kids, seeing how they're making something out of nothing, just relinquishing how beautiful it is that we as people can take one thing and then it'll be totally different at the end of the day. And I definitely don't want to take that for granted, and it's something that I want to sustain forever and always, but you know, life happens. So yeah, I went to University of Oregon. I threw this slide in here. I don't know why this is on here, but whatever. It's funny because I don't know if you guys know that bar Jameson's. Yeah? Anyway, my first art show was there. It's so funny. Like I was like, oh, wow, I had my start here in a way. Well, when I first came to school, I majored in journalism, and I also was part of a lot of student unions, and how I got into design and illustration was designing flyers for all the student unions, like APASU, BSU, Women's Center. I think I joined every student union at University of Oregon. And I was in a journalism majored in advertising and communication studies. In my last semester of college, I signed up for a class called Digital Illustration with Salter. And I remember everyone was like, oh my gosh, Salter's such a hard ass. Like everyone's scared of him. And I was like, sure, let's see how this class goes. Anyway, I remember learning Illustrator in his class. That was the first time I played with a program like Illustrator. I think in the past it was like I used a lot of Photoshop and obviously physical, like traditional work. And he had a very minimal approach to graphic making. And I remember very detailed, like one of our first projects was a self-portrait. And I remember making, like I was struggling with like creating minimal approach to like art making. And I created this self-portrait of my head, like super exposed on a heart, a beating heart. And then I was like really nervous. I spent hours on this project, just making sure it like hit his marks, you know, it was smooth, the lines are clean, whatever. And then I sent it in. I remember getting an A on that project, and that was like the most accomplished I have ever felt in my life at that time point. And that's when I knew I like really loved this like type of graphic making, this image making. And honestly, with his help, he was like, you know, I'm starting a digital arts BFA next year. This was in 2008, and I had a job lined up. I remember it was going to be in like California, and then I was in this class, and then, you know, Salter's like, I'm starting a BFA digital arts next year. Would you like to join? And I remember that being such a crazy decision in my life because I just really wanted to work and make money. That was where my head was at for most of my life. But then this opportunity just sounded so awesome. So I remember emailing him. I actually pulled up an email I had with you recently, which I was like, I don't know what to decide. And anyway, obviously I went to BFA. I made a decision, and I think that really changed my trajectory in my life, which is crazy thinking back. You know, I attended the BFA at White Stag in Portland back when it was open. And, you know, since I didn't really have any training or any sort of art background besides my Sunday art class, I think BFA really, beyond any like technical or theoretical lessons I've learned, what it taught me was, you know, the need to follow my intuition and carry that through to the end. Like with all the critiques, reviews, like it really helped me understand you have to just stick it through, which was like a big lesson that I still really think about and go back to till this day. But yes, thank you to the people that's helped me till this day, because honestly, nobody does it alone. That's a lesson I definitely have learned. But then, obviously, after I graduated, I went back to scarcity mentality, and I wanted to show a screenshot of the emails I sent out after I graduated to like nobody responded to at all. And I just think it's like a nice email to show, especially people in school. Yeah, I was like, this is 2009, there's a recession, you know, nobody wanted to hire me. So here I was like cold emailing all these random people. Looking back, I'm like, why did I try to apply to like, I don't even know what some of that stuff says. Like, anyway, there's like jobs that just like didn't even make sense to me, but I remember just being like, I need to work. Like even after all the work that I've done at BFA to follow my intuition, I definitely went against it to try to find and thrive for something that I thought made sense for me. So I ended up finding a job as a designer at a hippie dance company that's based in Portland, and then later on the design company became an advertising and product design. So I basically went to the work path for a few years, trying to like find myself, trying to understand my place in the world. I've always battled against this notion that I'm an artist. You know, I just didn't want to, for some reason, I just didn't really want that in my life, whether it's a cultural thing or something that I just, you know, have been instilled since I was a child. But I remember when I turned 25, I was in a very like creative-less job at an agency, making good money, but then also just so soulless that I decided I was going to draw something every single day. No matter what it is, I'm just going to go back into the place I was when I was in BFA, where I can just explore all these parts of me and draw and just feel whatever. So I ended up doing that for a few years. I started drawing every day. Soon it became, you know, prints I would give to my friends and share on Instagram. And then I would start selling greeting cards and then textile, and then starting to insert myself in like little group shows here and there, and it just kept on going. And I'm like embarrassed to show this, but this is like this is like my early work. I can't believe I'm showing this, but you know what? Vulnerability, baby. Early work, drawing, trying out different types of aesthetic, different colors, different themes. And I think it wasn't until I moved to New York in 2014 when I discovered the trackpad. And I felt so in control than I ever did than with the pencil, with the trackpad. Now, yeah, it's really interesting. It's just like this, I think what really drew me to the trackpad is that you could literally just take this tool with you anywhere and everywhere you go. It's so compact. You could do so much, like refining with it. It's just such a simple tool that I just really loved working with. Something about moving shapes around that's like very intrinsic inside me. And I realized as I was working with the trackpad and just getting really excited about the how easy and casual, but then fulfilling it was, the vibrancy from Sailor Moon, or like the artwork that I was really resonating with as a child, is starting to come out of my work. And color really channeled that sense of freedom I sought after that I may not have in my daily life, especially in my childhood. So yeah, I think my turning point was going to the trackpad, which sounds really crazy, but that's where it started. And then at this point of my life, the trackpad has exploded into, actual physical experiences, a mural, whether, it's like a sculpture, whether that's a rug. I think it's just so cool to see how something so simple can be pushed to like its limits. And I think I just did that for the past however many years, push everything as much as I can to its limits. Yeah, so it's been really interesting, to say the least. I think the most powerful thing in any type of work starts with an intention, and for me that's an image. So my favorite works always start with a very mundane moment. So I think New York for me was a very exciting place to be. It smelled like shit, which I don't know why I enjoyed. Like enjoyed in a way where it's stimulating, I was inspired by the oil stains, I was inspired by the people. So I think that type of energy, along with, my newfound freedom, just like a freedom to create wherever I am, really helped craft my images. So, for this one, I created this image after I gave birth for the first child, and then everything just exploded around me. And I think this one was trying to speak about the beauty and the explosion and the transformation of my life. This art piece I created when I was going through depression and just kind of really understanding how it feels pouring out of my body. This one is out of like the feeling when you first meet somebody and there's a lot of like the honeymoon stage, but then there's like possessiveness. I love drawing works that really feed into my emotional state. So a lot of these images depict a very specific moment in my life. And this one was a more recent drawing that I started working with AI, in which it's a little bit different than the type I'm exploring, but this one is about like trying to expand outside of where I am now, because I feel a little stuck, to be honest. So yeah, I think for me, like my process is taking images or taking inspiration from a moment, throwing it on paper, move shapes around until it makes sense. With my client works, I never share sketches. I always share a written intention because I think the creative process always happens as I start working. So this is an example of my process at play. The first drawing on the left actually was a killed project. It was an editorial piece about money, and I wanted to showcase the world that the money is involved and affects, and I just love the color and the simplicity and the minimalism of that piece. And the second piece, I like to go back to a lot of killed work. I think that's part of my process as well, is going back to old work and seeing how it changes with my feelings as a person that changes. So the second piece is when I went back to that piece and was just reworking a composition as a practice. And the third one was the third version of the same image. I was fighting with my partner at the time, and I was drawing at the same time, which is not the best thing to do when you're fighting with somebody. Don't just go draw. It's pretty dismissive, but I was doing that, and I think just looking at the progression of this work is really intrinsic to my progress, because I think it's always you can always keep on going. And I think for this one, it definitely showcased my emotional state. And it went from like work to play to like an emotional outburst. So I want to talk some more about my process. Like, you know, for example, when I work with a client, so this one was like a Spotify mural I created. I start first with the concept. I like to write everything out, make sure that, you know, me and the collaborators and I align on a mood, align on like the adjectives and, you know, everything that makes sense in the mood. I like to provide like elements that can share to my collaborators what I'm trying to go for, because most of the time, since I don't create sketches, I like to at least make sure my ideas are succinct enough to communicate, because I think visual art is extremely subjective. So the more communication you can provide, like the better, I think the better and more efficient the collaborative effort is. So this was an example of like a mural that was based on music and the way that music makes us feel, and the way I would pitch to a client or pitch to a collaborator on like what I would take the process and how I would work with the work. And then after that is aligned, I like to dump a lot of shapes on a document. So I like to like take inspiration from movies, from my own personal experience in life, and just like create a bunch of stuff. I'm very disorganized, by the way. I'm like jumping back and forth, as you can tell. I like to throw everything I can on one thing so I could just see what I'm working with. So for this specific project, it was for the Nike retail store. And I was asked to capture the essence of like fitness, basically, and like translating the feeling of moving to capturing the exact moment of a jump. So I think throwing all the stuff on one paper allowed me to like understand what kind of compositions I could work with. And so I usually boundary, like create, you know, various compositions of the shapes as I play around with it. And I think that's why I like digital work so much, is that there's so much, like, there's so many variety of things you could do with, you know, your work, and it doesn't take that much like effort to change things around. I like how flexible it is. So I start every project with a grayscale to understand tonality, to see how it can translate into color. And once I find like imagery and composition that really works and I resonate with, I go into the images themselves and I start working with the colors. Like I narrow down the tones, the heaviness, lightness, and I do the same process again where I just move colors around until it makes sense, which maybe it's like very intuitive to me. Me explaining my process is very difficult because it's such an intuitive thing for me to do. I can't say like I have, you know, experience in color theory. I haven't studied color theory, but I understand what feels good, and I think I follow that intuition always. And then come to like a final image that resonate with, and I start tweaking into it and making sure that the composition, the colors work in its favor. And the type of work I really resonate with are when color really plays with the composition to create a level of interest. Like I think there's, going back to like the magic behind the art, there's always something that I like to find that captures something special. We like special. I think creatives just like special. And finding something special in the composition you make is really important, at least for me. And so I allow one composition to guide the other types of graphic making that I would create, especially in one project. So for this one, you know, I was able to find a composition that I really loved, and then taking that inspiration and how do I juxtapose it to the other types of work that I have to create as well. That showcases different movements, showcases different like themes and feelings. And yeah, I think the illustrations themselves end up being repurposed in all of the Nike stores in New York, and I think in East Coast and Boston as well. So that was like a really fun project because it just gave a lot of openness. I mean, yes, it's like restrained within the Nike boundary, but then it also gave me a lot of freedom to play with how things work and how colors work and how forms are displayed. Do we have any questions? No? Okay. Yes, comment.
I noticed your purple and green together a lot.
Yes. Yes. I think so too. I remember like looking back at my work and being like, wow, I'm a rebel. Like, anyway, thank you though. I also do this with screen captures. I think my favorite invention of all time is a screenshot function on the computer. Just because you could just screen capture anything you want at all times and it stays in a folder, and it's like how I keep inspiration. So when I'm low on inspiration, a lot of times I watch movies or images that are moving, any sort of film, and I just watch for interesting moments in the movie, and I just dump everything into a document. So for this project, I did just that. This is in 2018 when I was just kind of understanding my identity as an Asian American, and watching a lot, like this is a time I think when a lot of ramen shops are opening up in New York. Like there was a lot of ramen shops in New York, but there was more opening up. And just being like, oh, there's this movie Tampopo. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. Amazing, I love that movie. And just watching like the way, you know, we slurp noodles and eat food, and also really getting into mukbang and just thinking about how when I was young, that manner was not accepted. My parents, I was always embarrassed by my parents and the way they ate, and I realized I had this internalized like racism towards my own people. And so I wanted to just create work that kind of honored the way that I ate, the type of food that I ate, and just, you know, and a lot of the mannerisms that were deemed rude were actually, you know, a gesture of politeness in a different culture. So I was exploring that topic and just very inspired by the different types of food and creating works that I really felt like really exaggerated and beautified the type of food that I was eating, and also the gestures, like just showcasing how much I honor the food that my culture has or has passed down for centuries. And as I was creating through these, like it started with the noodles and then, you know, went deeper into chicken feet and fish heads, and my favorite thing is fish eyeballs, and just like really getting into the intricacies of the things I really enjoyed. As I was creating this type of work, I was working at a space called ADO. This was a space that was in Brooklyn. It's no longer there. And I had a desk space in this area, and they had like CNC. It's kind of like a miniature college, but then it's like an open working space. And they had this open, beautiful atrium, like the one you see on the right, where people would come and do talks like on architecture and design. And I remember working through my works on like food and mannerisms and realizing I want to pitch an idea for ADO to create a show. And of course, you know, it was the first time I took a lot of initiative to just, I was able to see a space, you know, connect to the people that was working there, to connect to the people that, you know, ran the programs, and just pitch them an idea about what I wanted to showcase. And so basically I wanted to really take the space of ADO to its fullest capacity, because I know that a lot of my work can be 2D, it can be printed, it can be painted, but I really wanted to take advantage of the beautiful skylight and the space that's within this area. So instead of creating something I would normally do, I found a fabricator all the way in Washington to create like a physical mouth. And I feel like this is one of my favorite projects to date, and I talk about this in every single talk. So if you have seen it in my past podcasts or whatever, sorry, I'm repeating again. But it was an interesting experience because I was able to collaborate with somebody across the country without physically even going over there. I would have liked that, but I didn't have a chance at the time. And just being like really meticulous about exactly what I'm looking for, the size, working with like a 3D modeling, working with color, and the ability to see something that started with a like homage to my, you know, my own insecurities, and pushing that into something like a physical thing which was really cool. The whole process was interesting too because I took the lead on the entire project, so I had to find not just the fabricators, but the trucking companies who are truckers are like mafias basically. Like they, you know, for them to carry the entire piece across country, working with like, you know, making sure the proposals are, you know, like pitching on the money. Like I worked on every aspect of this project, and I think that's why I carry it so deeply with my heart, is that I'm able to push this in every aspect, not just the artistic creative side, but also like the business and logistical side as well. And yeah, I was able to present this. Oh, is it not working? It's not playing. Oh, like in front of all the videos I was watching that inspired the piece itself. I just wanted the viewer to be in the space, watching and hearing the sounds of eating and crunching, but then also witnessing it with all the types of food around. I wanted that like characteristic to be part of the experience. So it's not like so serious. Like I like to make things a little bit more playful as well. So I think it was extremely successful. I had tons of fun with all the people that came through, and like, you know, ended up having a really fun night with the opening night as well. And it's funny because context is everything. So now the artwork sits in a burner bar in Bushwick. Which is funny because no one thinks about what happens to the art after the show. You know, I didn't think about that really, especially a sculpture that's like 14 feet tall and like 20 feet wide. So a huge learning curve here was like figuring out what to do with the piece after the show. Like, where do they all go to die? Anyway, for me, it was in a burner bar in Bushwick. If you guys ever go visit Bushwick, please go sit on the mouth. It's funny, it's like so out of context. Like, you know, all the thought that went behind it is just like in this bar. Anyway, too real. Anyway, love it. During that time though, going to a next subject, I was pregnant. And I think going back to personal work, you know, I think the Fuck Your Manners exhibition really pushed me to become very personal with the work I present. So I was also pregnant during that time. And I became fascinated by the body and the changes that the body changes through pregnancy. And I love the shape of it. I love that there's like a symmetry between the two bumps in the front and the back. So I would draw during that time period like tons of work related around pregnancy, looking at, you know, all aspects of my body, just kind of seeing the body as a form that changes and being objective to it instead of being so subjective within my own body. And I think in the last 3 years, that's where a lot of my work is inspired from, is from my labor, my experience as a mother, my experiences doing pregnancy, labor especially. I had 2 births, and the first one was at the hospital, and that was extremely intense. I felt like I was on acid, but then it was painful. And the second one I had at home because it was during COVID. And that time was vastly different. And just seeing the 2 pieces that came out of the first birth versus the second birth is, of course, it's like very similar in terms of like the mysticism and the magic and the transformation. But I think there's like a quality to it that I can't quite place just yet, just having the 2 different experiences. What I learned from my second birth, actually just even both labors, is that you can't take control. And I think that's a lesson I've resonated with, especially since birth, is that you have no control over anything. Like doing labor, I had no control. I gave up all control. I let pain guide me. And, you know, the birth was successful, and thankfully I had a healthy child, except after the home birth, my placenta stayed in. So I didn't know before giving birth that when you deliver, you're supposed to deliver your placenta along with your baby. My second birth at home, my placenta decided to stay within me, so they had to end up carrying me to the stretcher to the hospital, where they put me on a bunch of ketamine and then forcefully took their hand up and manually removed my placenta. That was my crazy, okay, that was a crazy trip, doing the ketamine trip where I was, you know, losing a ton of blood. I remember being at the, if you guys have seen Interstellar, there's this section with the libraries that Matthew McConaughey goes through. That's kind of where I ended up. And then my anesthesiologist was like a jester, just laughing at me. Anyway, it was one of the most profound experiences of my life because I woke up and I'm just like, where am I? And I had lost, I became anemic after that because I lost so much blood. But that whole experience just made me like understand how much energy, it just made me realize like the body is so, it's like a machine. It's the best way I can say it. The body is a machine and you have no control over that. We think we have control, but we really don't. So that birth itself had led to so many projects since then. This is my most recent projects that I have launched, and this one is based off the contractions I experienced through my labor. Because I was unmedicated, I was able to experience the depths of each contraction. I think contraction is probably the most painful part of labor, at least for me. And the flowers represent every time I felt a contraction and it blossomed. And I'm still gonna create, I think for this project, this is like in the middle of it. I'm still creating it as we go through and go along, but this is like the first phase of it. And yeah, I think labor itself, motherhood, breastfeeding, it's just been such good material for me, especially as an artist. Breastfeeding especially because it's like, you know, in the past I saw breasts as just breasts, but now it's like a life force that sustains my child, and I've been breastfeeding for 3 years in a row. This is pretty intense. So my body and the you know, the way my body is, it's not mine anymore. It's to help and allow the other two humans survive and thrive. So I think for me, the mixture of labor and breastfeeding really started the path for me to create more with my body and sensation and not so much my mind. I think in the past, I really wanted to represent like literal experiences and moments in my life. And now through these like very deeply physical and visceral feelings and experiences, I feel a transformation. And it's funny, I'm here because I'm definitely in the midst of that transformation. I think like, you know, COVID, motherhood, life, it just really changed the way I create. For the past 2 years, I mean, I've been creating a lot of personal work, but then I've also paused for a really long time. You know, as a creative person, I've always pushed myself to create and create and create, but I think I've hit a point where it's very exhausting, and I want to be honest about that. And now realizing I really need to understand how to allocate my energy and protect a very vulnerable side of me, especially putting up such vulnerable work. I think part of life, part of being an artist is putting out, like being so vulnerable to the public. It's very jarring, I have to say, and it does take a toll out of you if you don't protect your energy. And I think the biggest struggle for me is honestly like sustaining the magic that I felt in the beginning. Like the world is just, it's messed up, you know? Like parenting, COVID, there's a lot of anti-Asian violence happening, the war, recession, and the new emerging markets such as NFTs, you know? Like everything is very confusing in my mind. I mean, I'm sure it's confusing for you guys, but right now, I'm also confused. So we're all in the same space together. But it's really made me realize, like, why do I create? You know, I always go back to that, like, who am I creating for? Why do I feel like I need to be productive? Who am I being productive for? Is it for myself or is it for, like, something else? And that's something I'm very keyed into. And I think some artists are very driven by their craft, and I really admire that. And I think I have to say I'm both driven by my craft and the ability to sustain my life. So I'm always like tiptoeing between, does this sustain me as a person, to does this sustain me as a creative? And this back and forth is just a lot of work. But with that said, you know, I have to also I have to give a lot of gratitude to all the opportunities I was afforded to, especially through like the existential crisis that you may or may not see on the internet. But I definitely have existential crisis every day. The past few months, though, I have to say, like, I'm having a mini breakthrough. It feels like a little baby because it's not mature, I would say. It's something I'm exploring, and I think like this is a really good stage in everyone's lives here, especially where you're trying on something new and you're not so sure what it is, but you just feel good about it. And for me, it's working with AI. Currently working with like a lot of generative artwork utilizing GAN, which is the Generative Adversarial Network. It's a text-to-image model that I've been working with. So what happens with this is it's like a Python library or a Python notebook, and instead of me drawing, sometimes I'll insert my work into it, but for the most part, I use text prompts I feed it into the machine. So I'll say, I think this one was like swirling flowers I don't remember what artist, in the style of an artist, but then in the style of airbrush. And then I would insert like an image I created into the machine to see where it comes out with. So it's interesting because I literally have no control over the outcome at all of this, like the image and the model, but some of the stuff I'm creating with just these text prompts has been like mind-blowing. It's stuff that I would have never had made. And I have to say, like, it's kind of scary to play with AI like this and realizing like, wait, is this gonna take my job one day? Like, it's interesting to think like AI can create such beautiful work, and like who's creating this? Is it me or is it AI? So that's something I'm like battling with right now and kind of understanding how it works. Like, I think the one thing that's interesting is like I've been able to like take a lot of these artworks that I create through AI and like elaborate on other experiments. So just seeing how it's changing the way I see creative work, and like taking something like this and then like juxtaposing onto like an animation I've created in the past, or just combining it, and just I like to, you know, push things that I've done before. So now, how does AI help contribute to that process? And I think what I got from this is that, like, honestly, everyone can plagiarize your work. People will definitely, no one is like a true original person, but the intention, the soul, and the depth and the origin of the prompts, that can never be plagiarized. And that's something I kind of am understanding through this process of letting control go. And it goes hand in hand in what I'm doing in my personal life. Healing. I love talking about therapy. If I talk to you in one-on-one, we're talking about therapy. And for me, I think somatic therapy is something that I've been really resonating with, because the process involves a lot of visualization and sensation awareness. And I'm seeing how me being in touch with my body and being more thoughtful and sensitive and aware through my body has changed my work as well, because the work I'm creating right now is much, like, it's not as figurative. Like, my client work is extremely figurative. I think client work, you have to make something that everybody understands, but the personal stuff, it's like only you can understand, and maybe some people can connect to it as well. So it's definitely revealing itself over time. And I think the more in touch I am with my body, my traumas, my sensation, the more I understand why I'm creating the work I'm doing, because art to me is communication, and it's my therapy. So that's my interest right now, is how do I communicate and express my energy through visual work. Yeah, I think it's just going back to having no control of the external, ever. I'm just trying to let it all go and see what happens. And I'm excited, but really scared at the same time. Especially after having so many years of working with high-profile clients. You know, I'm like starting over, and I'm like, do you guys like me still? You know, who knows? We'll see how that goes. So yeah, I think we're just constantly struggling as humans. Sounds really morbid, it's true. For me, I am just constantly juggling a working person, a creative person, a mother, a human. And ultimately, at the very end, I just want to find freedom. I always end all my talks with this. It's freedom. I think for me, freedom isn't limitless. It's not boundless. It's having an intention and going towards it. To me, it's being open to the results. It's play. It's like the deepest sense of trust and love you can feel for yourself and for others. And that's what I know I am going towards no matter where I go in my creative practice, no matter where I go, my aesthetic, with wherever I go in life, even if I am no longer an artist. I think for me, I will always strive for that freedom inside me, and I hope we can all find that for ourselves. Thank you. Yeah. Wow, that was a long talk. Do we do questions or anything? Okay. Yeah. Oh, go for it.
I'm just curious, besides the AI artwork, what software do you use to create your images?
Illustrator, Photoshop, After Effects. What else? That's it. No, I'm starting to learn Blender. But yeah, that's like mostly it's Photoshop and Illustrator.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do your AI works overlap with your pregnancy or experiences of motherhood? I'm wondering if there's a connection between like teaching an AI and teaching a child.
Oh my God, it's great. I think teaching a child right now is, yeah, it's teaching myself. Like, I think right now I'm like my kids are 1 and 3, and they're in that stage where you have to discipline them, but you also have to like give them a lot of room to build and grow. And so finding that boundary and that right type of maintaining is really important constantly, and I find that it's me teaching myself ultimately. It's like me remothering myself. And I think with AI, it's teaching. Yeah, it's like teaching a machine how to execute in a way. But I think with AI, it's like it feels way more like reckless, you know? Because I think playing with machine and playing with like anything, you don't really. There's not like, for me at least, I'm very reckless with it. I'm very disorganized, so I just like to like fuck around. But with the kid, it's like you can't really do that. So I think there is some similarity because it is really fun, but then at the same time, there's like a change in how I approach both. But that's interesting to bring that up. Yeah.
Over time, as like, because you mentioned how birth kind of opened the door for you to make art out of it and its experiences and the emotions of it. Do you think like as those children get older, they're going to continue on that door, like open window for you for like the experiences that they bring upon their like, them growing up, going as like a child to like a young teenager to young adult? Do you think that might continue on like with your experiences with art and like demonstrating it?
I hope so. I think that it would be amazing if my kids and I grow together artistically. There's a lot of parent residencies that are happening. I've noticed, people are sending this to me, and then there's like residencies where you could go in with your kid apparently, and I think that's awesome. But I think what I could do is just show them what I'm interested in, and my partner will show them what he's interested in, and just let them go. Like, I don't need them to be an artist. I think it's important for them to find their own selves in their own ways.
Well, I was thinking like, not exactly them becoming an artist, but like as they become like young adults, because he made the whole piece of like the whole breast, and then like,
Yeah.
as them becoming young adults, do you think you might find yourself creating a piece that expresses how you view that?
Probably, definitely. After I started creating a lot of like the motherhood works, I was creating a lot of works on the body, the female body, and going back 5 years and just my lens on the body and how I was depicting that was so different. And I love going back to old work and then changing it and making sure it resonates with me now. And I think that's important for everyone to do. Like, I don't like when things are archived, it's archived, you know? Because I think as people, it's important to grow with your work, but also I think the past will always affect you. And it's important to look at the past and see how it's made you who you are today and how it's changed. I think it's like the best way to grow, honestly, as a person. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any goals?
Oh man. As a goal, as a what?
I guess as an artist, but even just like if you have any specific goals.
Do I have any goals? I have lots of goals. Right now, I want to buy a house. That's a life goal. I think a goal as an artist is I want to create more work based on labor. I think that is such a crazy transformative experience that I don't see people talking about as much. I think Judy Chicago is an artist that really dove into that topic. And I know that I've seen more types of work on that, but I think it'd be really amazing to create work that can resonate all bodies on that process of labor. So whether that's like a experiential thing where you are, you know, in a space, feeling the breathing, like I want people to understand pain and feel the pain and whatever that is. And I think that would be a really awesome goal of mine in the next couple years, is creating like an experience for that type of pain, for everyone to resonate with. Yeah. That's a funny question. What's up?
I just wanted to thank you.
Thanks.
For bringing like a really authentic, vulnerable self. I think that's super inspiring. I also want to thank you for like, I haven't quite keyed in on the collective of all of us sort of paying attention to the well-being that's required at the moment. And you're saying it out loud here and now, and like it's a special, unique time that we're all sort of have the advantage to share some of this together, to be healed together. It's like really interesting.
Totally.
And like, I've never experienced this moment any other time. You know?
Yeah.
It's super unique.
It's a very unique time.
I don't know if there's a question wrapped in there. I did also want to recognize that you seamlessly have this commercial work and fine art or conceptual work that you bounce back and forth really easily, and it's something that I love and I recognize. I know a lot of our students are curious about it.
Mm-hmm.
For many years, I've talked about the differences between art and design and those methodologies, and for the last several years, I've been talking about the similarities because I think they map kind of perfectly. There's an idea that needs to be communicated. There's a series of methods or media that I can say them with. Can you shed any kind of insights or curiosities or anything you discovered about playing with both?
I think for me, I'm actually trying to differentiate, which is funny. I think for a really long time, I wanted to combine my commercial and personal and fine art practice into one, because I think as a person, you can only do so much. And now the more I do it, the more I want to separate in a way where I have one that's sacred to myself, where I just play like my AI stuff. That's like something that I'm just working with on my own. And the other one, which is a lot more palatable for mainstream, that I'm like I think I'm just naturally keyed into that aspect of it. I think for me, the reason why I was able to kind of go between both worlds very easily is because of like the vibrancy of the work I like to create, and that comes from like a personal space. And I think because it's so exciting and stimulating in terms, like someone called it like jarring, which is fine, but like I love to play with colors. I think the play aspect of it is attractive to the mainstream, because I think for the commercial success, it is like basically gearing towards the mainstream and making sure that the mainstream, which is a vast majority of audience, will resonate with your work, and I think everyone resonates with play. And I think that's why I was able to go between the two very easily. But now I'm at a place where playing, I still love it, but the way it's looking doesn't look like it was 5 years ago. And I think that's just part of everyone's lives, no matter if you're an artist or you're a doctor, whatever, your life just changes every 5 years. Every 7 years, your body physically changes. Your cells regenerate every 7 years. So I do believe that now I'm at a place where I want to diversify and have sacred space versus livelihood space. And probably another 7 years, I want to unite that again. So, yeah. Hi. Yeah.
But that also does make me a bit more curious of how you kind of maintain those differences between commercial and your artist work, because I'm kind of facing in that conundrum as I go like two personas myself.
Yeah. I don't have an answer to that because I'm figuring that out as we speak. I think for the most part, I trust my intuition, right? Going back to the first part of my talk, it's so important to just guide yourself and allow your intuition to guide you, because you want to be proud of where you become. You know, you're not making anyone else proud, you're making yourself proud. So for me, whether this type of work involves more commercial success or it makes me a starving artist, you know, that's something that I have to trust my guidance, and I trust the work I've been able to create and where I'm going. I trust that it will lead me to somewhere else, and maybe that success is different. I think the older, like every period of time, you redefine success to you. I mean, to me, I redefine success all the time. When I was younger, I thought success was collaborating with Nike, for instance. And now I'm like, I don't know if that's maybe I made that goal, but what's after this? What is actually true success? You know, is that recognition? Is that creating work that you resonate with that other people do as well? So I think for me, it's just understanding all the different types of successes, personally, you know, job-wise, commercially, whatever that is. So yeah, I'm also clueless, to say the least. Okay. I think that everything I just talked about, I think that's the biggest hardship. Is I think once my work became my livelihood, like once it became a thing I make money from, it's been very confusing. I'm sorry to be jaded, but it's definitely been a little bit confusing, because you start to think about, oh, do I need to make this way so other people respond to it? So I do this. And then there's also the element of valuing yourself. Like, you know, every client, I just say like every project and the different negotiation for that. I mean, I have a rep right now that helps me with everything, but understanding value, not just in terms of how much something costs, is very difficult. Like, I think that's why NFT space is really confusing to me, because when you're selling an NFT, it's like everything becomes a commodity to be sold. And I've seen friends that have released like an NFT series that doesn't get sold, and it's like really clever and thoughtful. Doesn't diminish the value of the piece, but then because it didn't get sold, it confuses the person on what the true value is. So I do feel like, for me personally, money confuses things. And that's been the most challenging thing, to understand how to categorize this type of stuff. But yeah, I think that's it. What's up?
How do you balance being a mother and having time to create?
Making sure you have a supportive partner. Making sure you have a supportive network is really important. I think prioritizing both. It's really hard, I have to say. It's one of the most, okay, going back to the question, what has been the most challenging? This also is very challenging, like especially having 2 really young kids and then having a creative practice. It's very hard to do. I think also, just time is so precious now. You know, I don't have all the time in the world to like think about something and think about different ways to make it work and create it. Now I have like 2 hours a day, if that. And it's like, a creative process is always confusing too. It's not like you can just get into the creative zone when you want to. It takes time and you just don't know when it's gonna happen. Sometimes you're like really into it and you have to like feed the baby. So I'm definitely in that stage right now where I'm like balancing both, but I do believe that the hardships I feel will feed my inspiration in the future. Like without hardship, like what are you making? You know, like without challenges in life, what are you creating? So for me, I'm just hoping this energy goes somewhere in the future, and it will. Oh, shoot. Well, thank you guys so much for coming.